Let's roll. Co-pilot on the passenger side, be so fly. Yeah. She so lit, we so high. Just me and my chick, yeah. Just me and my chick, yeah. Co-pilot on the passenger side, be so fly. Yeah. She so lit, we so high. Just me and my chick, yeah. Just me and my chick, yeah. She give me a bit of her love.
Yo, what up, y'all? Welcome to another one. This your boy Rod One, and this is Sparking Conversation. And y'all know what I do each and every week. I get up here and I talk to some of the world's most interesting people. And tonight I'm gonna do the same thing. But before we get into that, y'all know I gotta do the same thing like I do each and every week as well. And that's give thanks to all of those that download the audio version of this platform. Thank you guys so much. It means so much because we understand that that's what this platform game is about. We get all the YouTube, we get all these other things, Facebook and all that. Yeah, we get that. But, you know, when it really come down to it, your platform is really an audio-based thing when it comes to podcasting. So your stuff need to be everywhere that people consume podcasts. And because we are there, people consuming the podcast, and it's all over the world. We in 9 countries so far, right? And so, and that's consistently. So I just want to always give thanks to those people. I want to make sure anytime they download, first thing they hear before I get into everything else, the meat and potatoes of the show, is thank you to them, right? And I think that goes a long way, right? Because not only just giving thanks to them, but just being appreciative for anybody that supports you, right? And support your movement and support your cause, because it could very well be the opposite. You know, a lot of us, we get into this thing and when we start, you know, the views are not there. Right? The support is not there. The likes, comments, shares, all that stuff is not there. Even the stars. You know, right now, when we go live on these platforms, there's a way people could support us by giving us a penny, right? These stars. So on Facebook, they allow you to donate what they call stars, right? You can help support your creators or however you feel just by tipping them, sort of, right? And it's a penny. Each star represents a penny. So even in that, you know, you got to be thankful, because I know some other people would probably be like, "Oh man, it's a penny." Like, no, even in a penny, 1 cent, you have to be thankful, man, because life is about that. Because no one owes us support, right? But it's up to us. We owe ourselves to get out here and do these things and not be afraid, right? Not be scared to do the things that are inside of us, right? Because so many people live with resistance to the things that they know they're supposed to do, but their mind, and when it comes to that fight or flight thing and their subconscious, it doesn't allow them to push through like they're supposed to. And that's why I always like to motivate everybody that's out here. If you're in this podcast game, this is one of the things that you feel like is your purpose. We're not gatekeepers over here. We want to make sure you click the link in the description for rssfeed.com. Get your podcast audio version and get it distributed to all the places that they do audio. You guys get it out there. Keep it going, right? Never mind the likes and the comments and all that other stuff that you get on social media. Just make sure you focus on the audio version of your platform. Focus on the content. Right? You could have a fly little studio set up and all that. You really focus on this part, the conversation you're having with your guests, the information you give out. Let that be what you focus on, because that's how you move your platform around. Worrying about likes and comments and shares and all that other stuff and going viral and all that, you got to get that out your mind. You got to really put into the fact that you're building something, right? You're building a brand. So remember that. All right. So without further ado, I want to say thank you guys to all of y'all also that push play on all of our content. We had a new piece of content that dropped today, comedy content, Therapy Gone Wrong Part 14. And I definitely appreciate those of you that already push play so far. For those of you that follow me on Facebook, all you got to do is go to my timeline. It is pinned to the top. You can push play. You can check us out. We on YouTube as well, Team Collective TV. And you can go there and you can check us out. We moving around out here. Thank y'all so much from the bottom of my heart. All right. Also, we Don't Wait, We Create. You know what I mean? Saturday, April 18th. And y'all know what the vibe is. I want to see all of y'all in the building. If you're into content, if you're a model, if you're an actor, actress, clothing designer, script or concept writer, brand ambassador, director, videographer, booking, a casting agent, if you're an author, if you're a podcast, right? Come on out there. A lot of you authors, you have books and you want to bring them to life. You want to tell people to tell stories. What better way to do it by meeting people who are already telling stories? It's just so many different ways for you guys to take control of your future and be a part of this digital age. Because one thing about it, people are losing their jobs left and right. But before I get into that and get into my rant and bring my guest on, let me finish what I'm doing and then we'll get into that, because part of what I got to say has to do with that. So with that being said, we got to give a shout out to all the people who've been asking me. I see that. Parasite cleansing. Most people have been asking me about that. Like, what's going on with that? How do you get more information? And like I always say, click the link in the description. It will give you the breakdown. You go to the website, it'll tell you exactly about all those. It'll tell you about heavy metals and plastics and all these different things that we have in our body and how you can get these things out. All right. Make sure, right, you go check it out. Because if you really think about it, y'all, a lot of you guys are dealing with things that they're just treating and not curing. So, and in the same token, whether I'm going to say these things are going to cure you or not is not my place. What I'm saying to you is that there are always ways for us to help ourselves. And everything that's going on in this world for us to help ourselves, God gave us the ability to do so. So if you just pay attention, you can get the information for yourself. And that's the one thing about this platform. It's about the information. It's not about making people to do things or trying to force people to do things or lead people astray. It's about giving out the information, and it's up to you. You know what I mean? Like they always say, you can't lead the horse. You can lead the horse to the water, but you can't make him drink, right? So that's that. All right. So now that all that's out the way, I got a very interesting guest that I'm gonna bring up today because you know, there are so many things that are going on in life right now that have people in fear. Like they're scared, and the way that life is set up right now, it doesn't look like there's any hope, right? One thing we're going to talk about, which I'm not going to get too deep in, we know the government shutdown is going on right now. We understand that TSA, the lines, and all these other things, the airports and travel, and all of these things are just going crazy out here, right? You got people that was going to work for a long time and not getting paid, and then so they say, "Yo, forget that. I'm not going if I'm not getting paid." And then I look at the war and all these other things, and they talk about the money that's going towards the war. And then so many people hit me throughout the week when things happen, asking me, am I going to talk about things? And one of the things that people want to do is they want to start talking about things from a separation standpoint of Democrat, Republican. And I just want y'all to know, from my perspective, I tell y'all that on the platform all the time, I'm not separating the two. There's nothing about the two that seems separate to me. It all seems like it's all being worked together. They're all in cahoots some type of way. And if one person is against the other, they only concerned about what they want and not the people. Because who would want somebody to go to work and not get paid? So for all of y'all that was hitting me that are representing Democratic Party that are hitting me saying, "Yo, see, look what the president doing. He paying for the war, but he ain't paying for the TSA and all this other stuff." And I keep telling y'all, like, y'all keep acting like that is a thing that you don't see that is being done on purpose. You guys don't understand that in the background, to me, and it's just my opinion, that they're setting up for something bigger than that, right? And all these things that are going on are just a distraction, because what's going to happen? The more chaotic things look, whenever a person comes and look like they are here to just save the day, they are the superhero, they're here to clean up the chaos and here to bring the change and all these other things. You got to be prepared for how that looks, y'all. Like this whole thing about the New World Order and all these other things that are going on, you got to understand that the way that things are done is being done in a way where it's leading up to it. It's not just boom. Even though we look up one day and things are just boom, but it don't. If you pay attention, you can see when the boom is coming. And that's what I'm saying about what's going on right now, because the more people are in fear, the more that puts them in desperation. The more people are in desperation, the more they'll accept anything. And the more they'll accept anything, the more control you're going to be under. Think about it, y'all. If y'all really think that, so many people are asking me, do we think that something is going to happen here on the U.S. soil? When stuff happens here every day. Like, it doesn't take somebody from the outside of the country for things to happen. There are things happening in neighborhoods and communities each and every day. There's terrorism going on in these streets of the United States each and every day. We don't have to be, for a lot of us in some of these communities that we grow up in and things like that, we've been on high alert our whole life. It's not new. The only difference is the people from these other countries and these other things that are upset with the United States, they don't understand that it's the people in the United States are not responsible for the things that are going on with them. And we understand that on the other end when it comes down to them. It's just we all are casualties of war, and so to speak. But the whole thing about people, the whole travel ban that's going on, and the ultimate travel warning that's going on for those of you that are Americans that like to travel abroad and go experience other places in other countries, even in the midst of what's going on now. And now they're saying that you got to be extra careful and extra wise when you go places because people are looking to do things to you. But they don't understand, like, yo, it's weird. We get things done to us here already. So, like, whenever y'all guys are so upset with America that you think that all Americans are in agreement to what goes on in all over the world, I want y'all to know it's not. People are not even agreeing over here what goes on in certain states. That's just not how it go. You know what I'm saying? But for some reason, people do. Just like the guy they was talking about last week that went and shot up the people because of what happened when they started bombing Iran and certain leaders were taken out. Then you got the guy over here who was an immigrant who came over here. He did everything he was supposed to do to get his citizenship. And then he get that mad about a place that he go and shoot up the people here. And it's like, yo, if you was that proud or you really wanted to be somewhere, why didn't you go there? Like, why you come here? And take it out on the people here. And the people here are not going over there taking it out on y'all. Whatever is going on with that particular part of the world and the leadership and everything else, y'all, to me, it's just to me, it seems like everybody is working together. They're trying to usher in this new thing. They're talking about smart cities. They're already putting cameras in every single everything, tapping into all kind of things. There's no such thing as privacy. You got things that's going on with the farming situation. You got farmers each and every day complaining about the seeds and everything else that's going on. And then yet we all are here just upset and battling over who's right or wrong on a party whenever we don't understand that the idea and the goal for us to work together more than ever is not being shown. I don't know. But anyway, I want to bring my guest up right now, right? Right? Because my guest is known for a lot of things. But one of the things that I know that this conversation is going to take the best turn possible is because he has predicted so many different things to the point where AI uses his predictions as a reference. And that's something right there. Right. And then, just from the research of my guests before I bring them up, because y'all know I like to let my guests tell y'all exactly who they are. But in so many words, y'all, there are a lot of people in this world who say they do something, and then there are those who actually do it. And this guy that I'm bringing up is a guy that actually does it. Let me see. We got a comment already. What's good? Just dropping by. All right. What's up, Cam? Good to hear from you, man. Hope everything is going well out there with what you got going on in the world, man. I definitely appreciate you, man. A world traveler right there. My man Cam, I got to get him on because he's definitely a person that get up and go. He does not let the grass grow under his feet. But other than that, let's do this real quick. Let's bring my guest up.
Well, thanks for having me.
Yeah, what's up, man? How you doing?
I'm doing fine.
Good, man. I'm glad to have you on the platform this evening. If you don't mind, I would like you to introduce yourself to the audience and then, just let them know why you're on the platform this evening.
Okay, sure. I'm Dr. Bob THEIL. As it puts up there, I've got a PhD. By the way, my PhD is in nutrition science. I also have a THD in early Christianity. And you mentioned about predictions. Well, one of the things is that I actually write a lot. Wasn't planning on saying this, but we'll go from here, I guess. I make 3 posts a day, 365 days a year, and that's minimum on average. So I average more than 3 a day. I write 4 magazines a year. I usually write a couple of books a year. And you talk about predictions. And you talked about what's going on in Iran. And it's kind of interesting because now you mentioned AI. I asked AI about something I did. And it's kind of funny. AI can be really biased. And for those of you who don't use AI a lot, I'm going to get technical for a moment. it does something called large language model, which basically means it looks at all kinds of stuff. And while it says it thinks, it doesn't think. What it does is it looks at the consensus of what sources it accepts. So if it doesn't accept a source, sometimes it doesn't like it. So you got to sometimes hone in and ask and ask and ask to get the right answer to your question. But you talk about predictions. And interestingly, on Friday, because I knew I was going to do your program, I thought, why don't I go into something I predicted back in April of 2007? And I'll write about that. And so I did. And so it's one of the things I can talk about today. And that was back in April of 2007. I wrote that because Iran, the country of Iran, will not be the biblical king of the south of Daniel chapter 11, that it's going to be somehow it's going to be neutralized. It's going to be somewhat neutralized is what I wrote. And I have probably written that 70 times, maybe 170 times since then. Okay, so I've written it a lot of times. Matter of fact, before the latest Iran-U.S. attacks in February to last month, I warned about it twice, including 8 days before it happened. Now, I didn't know when it was going to happen. I don't want to mislead people. But it was funny because I asked one of the AI programs, and now this is going to sound like a plug, but it's a plug that I think will help your viewers. My oldest son's got a website called fastestsearch.com. The reason I mention it is if you go there, he's got links to like 7 or 8 different AI programs. Okay. So sometimes I'll ask, if I'm doing research, I'll ask one, sometimes even the wrong answer. I might ask 6 or 7 and go back and ask until one of them figures out the right answer because they don't always agree. Okay. But I asked one about some of the predictions, and they said, some of those predictions people kind of could have guessed. Okay, fine. All right, that's fine. And it didn't think the one about Iran was specific enough in terms of the time. Now, I think it's totally specific in terms of the time because, I look through scripture, I look at things going on. By the way, so your listeners don't freak out, guy named Jesus, which they've heard of course, said in Matthew 24:6, the end is not yet. So first of all, I don't want to scare you people that the end is next week, next year. It's not. Okay. I'm going to just there. All right. So, but as far as this whole King of the South and stuff forming, there's a group that people may have heard of. They're called the Muslim Brotherhood. They started about 100 years ago over in Egypt. And what they want is a caliphate, an Islamic government that runs from, let's say, Spain, Morocco to Pakistan, maybe Indonesia. So that's kind of what they would like to have happen. And of course, that hasn't happened. And I don't think Spain will be part of it. But when I look at biblical prophecies and Islamic prophecies, by the way, I see that Islamic prophecies say there's a guy who's going to rise up. And this kind of ties in with Iran and all this kind of stuff. There's a guy who's supposed to rise up, and he's called the Mahdi, or the Imam Mahdi. Okay. Now, I don't want to confuse your listeners, but there are 2 versions of this Mahdi guy. We're going to talk about Iran's version. Then we're going to talk about the other version, because I think the other version is closer to the Bible. Okay. But
gotcha.
Iran's version is very, very important for what's going on right now. According to Shiite Islam, which is what Iran is, the leadership of Iran, they're Shiite Muslims. They believe that the successor to their prophet Muhammad was a cousin of Muhammad. And they believe he is the hidden one. So this guy who's born around 1869, plus or minus, he's been in suspended animation this whole time. Okay. The Ayatollah, the one who's dead, he actually claimed to see or talk to the Imam Mahdi a couple of times a few years ago. Okay. Now, I don't believe that, but I'm just telling you that's what he said.
Right.
So They had another president of Iran about 8 years ago, a guy named Mahmoud Ahmadinejad.
Right.
And he thought and they did a video, Iran did a video basically showing him on a tank and them taking over Jerusalem.
Mm.
And so he was supposed to be the Syed Khorsani, which I'd never heard of that before. Okay. Didn't know what that was, but he thought he would be the one who would help go into Jerusalem, help take it over, that this would cause chaos. And then this Imam Mahdi guy, the one who's in suspended animation, rises up and makes the world Islam, basically, or under Islamic law. So that's what he thought he was going to do. He thought that was his job. He didn't get they got rid of him. He actually tried to run for re-election about a year ago, and they wouldn't let him go past a certain part of the ballot. Well, what's this got to do with what's going on now? The current leader of Iran, who no one's seen him for a while, Mujtaba Khamenei, he thinks he's this Khorsani guy, Sayed Khorsani guy. So if you see any headlines that say he's more radical than his father, or he's more dangerous than his father, or something along that line, it's because, from what I've been able to read and tell, he thinks he's the one whose job it is to cause destruction over to Jerusalem, cause enough chaos that this Imam Mahdi will rise up and Shiite Islam will rule. Okay, that's what he thinks.
Right.
Well, related to this, under their theology, they believe in an antichrist who they call the THEIL. Now, according to both Shiite and Sunni Islam, and by the way, most Muslims are Sunni, like 85%. Okay.
Right.
Maybe even higher than that. According to both of them, the THEIL will only have one eye. Now, for reasons I haven't quite figured out, they've decided, at least some, not most, maybe not most of the Shiites, some of the Shiites have decided that Donald Trump is the THEIL. And so, like people who claim to believe the Bible but don't believe it, what they're saying is they don't mean one-eyed literally. They mean he's got a singular focus. Okay? Now, I've read the Hadiths and I've read parts of the Quran, lots of it actually, and I don't see it that way. I read it, okay, this is what it says. I think that's what they think it means. Doesn't mean I agree with it, but I say that's what it means. So their thinking is that the THEIL is there, and either the Mahdi or the current supreme leader is supposed to kill the THEIL. So Trump is supposed to die, according to that interpretation, and they want him dead. Of course, it's been speculated, and I think part of it's actually been proven that Iran did have something to do with one or more assassination attempts on Donald Trump.
Facts.
Okay. So they believe that if they can cause enough chaos, that this Imam Mahdi guy is going to rise up. Allah will take him out of suspended animation, and he'll be the one to bring upon the type of empire they want. Now, when Ahmadinejad was president, when I watched the video and read some stuff, the impression I got from him, and I think they still believe this, is that if they take over Israel, Jerusalem specifically, but parts of Israel, this will get all the other Muslims who are Sunni to go and support them. So that's what they were hoping. And then this guy's going to rise up and do all these things. Now, I mentioned that there's the Sunni Muslims. They got a very different opinion of this. They say, an Imam Mahdi probably will rise up, but he's not in suspended animation. He's not been around since the year 800 and something or another. He's not. He's a guy. He'll rise up and help unify the Muslim nations. Okay, Morocco, Libya, Algeria, Tunisia, Saudi Arabia, Emirates, Syria, Egypt. Better made it in Egypt, because biblical prophecy tends to if it points to a particular one country, this leader comes from, it would be Egypt.
Egypt.
I'm not sure it's Egypt, by the way, but if biblical prophecy pointed to one country, it's probably Egypt. So this is where Sunni Muslim prophecy agrees a bit more with biblical prophecy.
Right.
Now, I believe in biblical prophecy, which is why I wrote in 2007, 2010, 2013, 2014, 16, 17, 25, 26, all these years, that Iran ain't going to be the people who lead this. Okay. When you look at scripture in the Bible, the nations associated with the king of the south, Egypt, Libya, basically Jordan, Syria, the Arab countries. And it's like, okay, maybe Iran will support this, but I don't see anything that says it would be Iran. And so when I started to write this back in 2007, what got me to write it was not that I didn't think of it before, because I did, but there was another church who went out and said that Iran is the king of the south and that they're going to do this, this, and this. And I said, no, Iran's not the king of the south. And because it's not, and since it's such a big player, big military power, something's got to happen. So I came up with the term somewhat neutralized. Now, getting back to AI, so when I asked the AI program about it, they thought that was too vague. That's like, no, I think it was pretty specific back in 2007. I said, before the king of the south rises up, something's going to happen. I wrote, by the way, in the subsequent times that this could happen from Iran having civil unrest or the United States and or Israel attacking it. So last week, I saw a couple of good, interesting headlines. One headline said that Benjamin Netanyahu, the prime minister of Israel, said that Iran's missile and nuclear programs have been neutralized. That was a headline. Then another one out of Pakistan says, Donald Trump says Iran's been neutralized. Now, neither of those leaders actually used that term, but Trump said, their Navy's gone, the Air Force is gone, we've done this, 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 and this. And by neutralization, and I've written this before, I didn't mean that there'd be no Iran, but that they wouldn't be such a strong military power that they were going to lead the Islamic Confederation at the end.
Right.
And I believe that that has been confirmed. Now, that doesn't mean Iran doesn't have any missiles. It doesn't mean Iran cannot cause damage. Matter of fact, last night, some Iranian generals said they have a secret weapon that's going to destroy the enemy and they're going to win this war. Okay, that's what he said. Okay, I guess it depends on your definition of winning.
Right.
If your definition of winning is Iran will still be around after the United States gives up, that's probably fair. That's probably a good guess. Okay, the United States probably has no intention to stay in Iran indefinitely. So at some point in time, we'll give up. There'll be people left. I guess they could say they won.
Right.
But I do think, based on some other prophecies, that Iran, along with probably Hezbollah and probably some people in Syria, are going to do some more damage to Israel than they've done so far. One of the things they've talked about is damaging the desalination plants throughout the Middle East. And that looks like it's actually consistent with a biblical prophecy in the 22nd chapter of the book of Isaiah. And there's another prophecy there that says this confederation, well, I'll paraphrase this. It says, God has removed the protection of Judah, which we would call Israel, the nation over there. And great damage is going to happen to the city of David, which is Jerusalem. So that hasn't happened, by the way. And so I'm not sure I'd say I'm looking forward to damage, because I don't want people to die. All right.
I know what you mean. Yeah.
But biblically, I think that's something that Iran's still going to do. Now, is it going to do it tomorrow? Doubt it. Next week? Maybe. Next month? Maybe. Maybe Iran will follow the Art of War guidelines and pretend they've got nothing left. And a year from now, who knows? They'll do a preemptive strike. Okay, it's the United States
Right.
preemptive strike on them and starting 27th of February. So they might do it. So
Right.
I don't know the when. And the reason I don't know the when, the scripture doesn't say when, but I got some ideas about the what. And again, the most recent one was the idea that Iran would be somewhat neutralized militarily, and they have been.
Wow. So yeah, so I was thinking too, like while you were talking, and when they were talking about the Antichrist, because that's the big talk now amongst everything that's going on, right? Because of just so much of what Israel has been doing, and how it seems that uh, Israel has a hold on the United States to the point where they just have the United States doing things for them, and that's helping them to complete whatever their mission is, and at the same time, you know, we here are just being pawns used because, like I said, whenever people want to hurt something in America, they hurt the citizens. They never hurt the people who, they feel like call the shots. They only hurt the regular citizens that go to work every day and just trying to make it. They don't understand that there's a difference in that. So whenever you was talking about that Antichrist part, and saying that it probably wouldn't come out of Iran because of that, because I do notice that they are trying to, you know, Islam is really trying to take over in so many different places. I know in Texas they were talking about the new laws that are set in place in Texas for that. So, what do you think about that when it comes to the Antichrist? Do you really feel like the Antichrist will come out of anywhere, or do you really feel like Egypt is really North America and
Okay.
not in Africa?
Okay. All right. Several different points. Okay. First, yeah, I do believe there is one the Bible refers to as Antichrist in terms of a final Antichrist. Yes, Islam wants to flourish and they want to take over. Uh, I know there are people who believe that the Antichrist will be Islamic. But when I look at Scripture and I look at how things have happened historically, I believe that the one we would call there's many antichrists, okay, and the Bible says that, by the way. But as far as the one that's typically called that, I believe it will be a he, number one, and he will be associated with the Church of the Seven Hills in Revelation chapter 17. Now, while some people might call that Catholic bashing, it's not. And I will tell you why it's not Catholic bashing. Because according to Roman Catholic prophecies, and I have at least 24 books on Roman Catholic prophecies, okay, maybe even more than that, they're what they call private prophecies. These are things that are not in the Bible, okay? According to their private prophecies, the final Antichrist may be an anti-pope who turns against their religion. So
I heard that.
I believe that. I actually have a book. If I saw it, I'd hold the cover up so you could see it. But I wrote a book called Islamic and Biblical Prophecies for the 21st Century. And by the way, it's free at ccog.org or cogwriter.com. And I go through why the final Antichrist is not Islamic. But since I mentioned Islam, and I'll get back to the Antichrist, here's something people do not understand about Islam.
Right.
When Muhammad started out, he was not against the Jews or Christians, okay? What happened, though, is he said stuff that started to offend different ones. And eventually there were the wars okay. But actually, according to Muhammad, there were two kinds of Christians. My kind and the other kind.
Right.
And I mean your kind. Like, for example, one similarity we have with Islam is, for example, we don't eat pork, okay? And Islam doesn't do that. And there were a few other things, and we're also pacifists, okay? And so what was funny, Muhammad wrote about people like us over 1,000 years ago that we're no threat, but we can be annoying talking to us. And I thought that was absolutely hilarious when I read that. So okay, I'll try not to be annoying.
Right.
Okay. So anyway, he, meaning Muhammad, had access to the Old Testament and the New Testament. Okay. So it's not a surprise that some Islamic prophecy ties in with the Bible.
Right.
Okay. Now here's what most people don't know about Sunni Islam. Now we talked about Shiite Islam. We're going to talk Sunni Islam for a few moments. Okay, what Sunni Islam teaches is at the time of the end, they're going to have some problems in their countries. Okay? This will lead to the rise of a leader called the Imam Mahdi.
Mm-hmm.
He will put together a confederation, kind of a military confederation. And before I go further, I don't know if you ever heard of the concept of an Arab NATO, but that's been in the news off and on, and recently, the last couple of days. Of course, the term NATO makes no sense. North Atlantic Treaty Organization.
Yeah.
Okay? But what they mean by an Arab NATO is that the Arab countries will get together militarily. And with Iran throwing missiles at Saudi and Bahrain and Dubai.
Dubai, yeah.
And I think they threw some toward Jordan and etc. Qatar. Anyway, that the Arab countries are thinking, maybe we do have to get serious about having a collective defense. So that's consistent with what there's some thinking. So anyway, they think that this guy's going to somehow rise up and unify them militarily.
Right.
All right. And the Bible talks about a guy who is in charge of those areas. Middle East, North Africa, pretty much Muslim, pretty well Sunni Muslim. Okay. Yeah, there are Shiite Muslims in Iraq and in Syria, but not the majority in Syria. So anyway, they get together. Well, they teach that there will be a peace deal between a leader that rises up in Europe who's a Roman Catholic. Now, we teach that as well. Now, we would call this person the beast of the sea. All right. So they teach that there will be a deal. Now, what's interesting, I go back to biblical prophecy. In the 9th chapter of the book of Daniel, chapter 26, Daniel 9, verses 26 and 27, it talks about a guy who's the prince. Okay, so he's not the top dude. He's called the prince. And he's the prince of the people who are going to destroy the city and the sanctuary. Huh? Well, back in 70 AD, General Titus, under the order of Emperor Vespasian, conquered Jerusalem because the Jews had revolted in 67, and they had it. They were tired of this. They just destroyed everything. Okay, so this prince, therefore, has to have some connection to the people of the ancient Roman Empire, because it was the Roman Empire that destroyed
Jerusalem.
All right, so because of that, we say he's got to be a European leader of some kind. Okay, because Rome had, of course, Italy, but further north into Gaul, which is France now, and parts into Germania and those regions. So now we actually have a confederation over in Europe called the European Union.
Yeah.
Now, you mentioned predictions. One of the predictions I had was that the Lisbon Treaty would get approved about a dozen or so years ago, 14 years ago. And that happened, by the way, because I felt the Europeans are going to finally get together. But anyway, the Muslims teach that a European leader will make a peace deal with them. Well, there's a peace deal in Daniel 9:27, and it says this prince confirms the deal. Now, various people have different opinions about this. My opinion, I believe, is based on what the Hebrew says. It says he doesn't say he makes the deal, and because he's the prince, he ain't the top dog. Okay,
Right.
He's just a guy. Now, what's his position? I don't know. Could he be the minister of defense? Maybe. Could he just be a member of parliament? Maybe. Could he just be a guy who's got influence? Maybe. And I say that because I think when this deal is made, a lot of people won't believe this is the deal. And the Bible says it'll be a 1-week deal. Now, 1 week, how long does that mean? Well, according to the Roman Catholic Saint Hippolytus, who wrote in the early 200s AD, he said the 1 week meant 7 years. And most prophecy interpreters, including myself, agree with that. So we think there'll be a 7-year deal. Now, Islam, by the way, says a 7-year deal will happen between this head dude in Europe and their dude. Okay.
Wow.
The biblical terms for these guys are the king of the north and the king of the south eventually. But They call the one their leader, who's the Mahdi. So he makes a deal, and according to them, it is a 7-year deal. Okay, now maybe Muhammad people got this from the book of Daniel, or I don't know. I'm just telling you, Sunni Muslims teach a 7-year deal. Then they teach in the middle of the deal, the European dude's going to break the deal.
Wow.
Now, you can read that in the book of Daniel, chapter 9, verse 27. And if you go to Daniel, chapter 11, verse 31, this guy who was the prince is now the king of the north. So he breaks the deal in Daniel 9, of Daniel 9:27. He breaks it in Daniel 11:31. And by that time, he's called a king. So he's the top guy over there. Now, Islam teaches when he breaks it, the Antichrist is going to reign for 3.5 years with him. Well, who teaches that? A lot of people teach that. We teach that.
Right.
Okay, so the idea that the beast and Antichrist are going to reign for 3.5 years is consistent with what we teach, what we think the Bible teaches, and there are a lot of prophecy watchers who believe the same thing. Then Islam teaches this dude that everybody's heard of, called Jesus, is going to return. I kid you not. They say after 3.5 years, Jesus is going to return. And he's going to get rid of these guys. And the Bible teaches in the book of Revelation, chapter 19, Jesus comes, these guys get tossed in the lake of fire. All right. Now,
Right.
a couple other differences, though, between what the Sunni Muslims teach and we teach. One thing they teach that we do agree with is he'll ban people from eating pork. Okay. Muslim literature calls it, he's going to kill the pig. Okay. All right. So,
Gotcha.
and that's how they interpret it too, by the way. But here's where we're totally different from them. They teach when Jesus comes, he's going to be Muslim. And everybody needs to become Muslim. See, what a lot of people don't realize, Islam teaches that Jesus is a great man, a prophet, and a savior. But they do not teach that it should be Christianity. Let me back up a little bit on Islam.
Wow. Okay.
Islam teaches that Abraham had the original faith. Okay, Abraham,
Right.
Isaac, and Jacob, and Israel, and all that. And that God then worked through Moses. This is what Islam teaches, to get the Jews better, or get the children of Israel better. Then Jesus came to make it even better. Okay, so he improved upon it. But according to Islam, the Jews and the Christians went the wrong way. Although, again, there was a second group, which would be yes. But okay, the Jews and the Christians went the wrong way. So according to Islam, God raised up Muhammad to do what? To restore the original Abrahamic faith. And that they have the original faith. Now, before I wrote my book on Islamic and biblical prophecies, I didn't know that part. I knew all the other stuff I just told you, but I didn't know that part. I did not know that they thought they had the original faith. But that's what they teach. They teach Moses is more or less a saint. They teach about a lot of these people in the Bible. They say for great men and women. Okay, they teach that. So, but they teach that when Jesus comes, he's going to tell everybody they should be Muslims. We don't believe that. We say that he will have the world go back to what we would call original Christianity, and rule for 1,000 years. Okay, so that's a basic difference between us and the Sunnis.
Right.
And so how that ties in back to the Antichrist is some people believe, a lot of people believe that the Antichrist is going to be the political leader who is in charge of the world at the end. But if you look at the scriptures that mention the word Antichrist, they're always talking about a religious leader. And one of the times the Apostle John uses the term false prophet.
Yeah.
We believe the false prophet of the book of Revelation is the final Antichrist, but he'll be in league with this other beast. So they'll be pretty well inseparable, but technically one is this beast and one is the Antichrist. And getting back to Roman Catholic prophecy, again, some of the prophecies teach that the Antichrist will be one of their leaders who doesn't really believe in Roman Catholicism. And I think that's what's going to happen. When I read various scriptures, and I've read Roman Catholic prophecies. Oh, by the way, I was raised Roman Catholic. Okay. So,
Gotcha.
all right. So when I read all this stuff, that's why I see that. So as far as where he's going to rise up from, I don't know what country the Antichrist will be from, but I believe he will be some type of an anti-pope, a person who pretends to believe in Roman Catholicism, and for a while he'll continue to do it, and then he'll betray the church. So
look, let me ask you this. So when it comes down to the Jews of the Bible,
yes,
and the Jews of the prophecy, do you feel like the people who are considered the Jews are the real Jews of the Bible?
okay. Wasn't expecting you to ask me that question, but it's fine because I've actually done a lot of studies into it. Matter of fact, I'll hold up another free book for your listeners called Lost Tribes and Prophecies, where I go into each of the lost tribes.
Right.
Okay. And why I do not believe that, I'm going to use the term black Israelism for lack of a better term. It's not that there are no black Israelites, because there are. Okay. But no, I don't believe that. I do believe that the people who are Jews in Judea, Israel, are basically from the tribe of Judah, or they married into it. Now, as you know, I'm pretty sure Israel, Jacob had 12 sons.
Right.
And for your listeners' information, I think the first time the Bible talks about the Jews in Israel, they were fighting each other. Because people think all the Israelites are Jews, and that's not true. What happened was, people have heard of King Saul. He was followed by King David, the one who slew Goliath. And then David was followed by his son Solomon. And Solomon was very wise, except for a couple of things. He had too many wives. The Bible said, don't do this. And he doesn't listen. He gets all these wives. But he taxed the people too much. So he dies around 1000 BC, okay, plus or minus. Maybe 970, somewhere like that. Anyway, he dies. And so some of the people come up to him and say, look, your dad taxes too much. We got to eat. We can't afford this. Cut us some slack and we'll do what you want. So what he does is he talks to people he grew up with. Bad move. And they say, no, you tell him you're the king, that your little finger is thicker than your father's thigh. Okay, you're the man. Okay, you are it. They just have to listen. So they don't like this. Now, I mentioned King Saul and King David. Mm-hmm. Saul was of the tribe of Benjamin, and David was of the tribe of Judah. So what happened was the other tribes said, we ain't dealing with this guy anymore. Forget this. We're separate. They came up with the new countries. They were basically the nation of Israel, and the one that Solomon's son Rehoboam had, that was the son, that was called Judah. Okay. And because the people from Benjamin, tight with Saul, they stayed. Now, then there's one more tribe called Levi. Mm-hmm. They were the priests. The problem is this Jeroboam guy. Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot to say. They made their own king, and they put a guy called Jeroboam as king.
Gotcha.
Okay. So now Jeroboam's starting to worry, though. There's a festival that the Jews keep, and we keep, by the way. They call it Sukkot. We call it the Feast of Tabernacles. And Jeroboam says, look, if these people go down to Jerusalem to keep this, maybe they'll turn against me. I don't like this idea. So he says, all right, I'm going to come up with my own holiday. Be the next month. And you people go to my holiday instead. So they did. But the Levites, who were the priests, they didn't like that. Some of them didn't like that. they said, "Hey, this ain't the religion. This ain't the religion of Moses, etc." No, don't go. So they came down, and many of them then merged in with Judah. So you got Judah, Benjamin, and Levi together. Now, there's 12 sons. You said, but aren't there 10 lost tribes? Yes, because what happened was there's a guy named Joseph. You may have heard of him. They actually did plays. Joseph's an amazing dream code or whatever they call that. But he was in Egypt, and he helped prevent them from starving from a famine. Anyway, when his dad, Jacob Israel, met with him, he got to meet his kids. He had 2 kids. One was called Ephraim, and one was called Manasseh.
That's it.
Mm-hmm. And in the 48th chapter of the book of Genesis, Jacob Israel blessed them, and he crossed his hands when he did it. Okay? And then Joseph was standing there. Oh, so at the time, Jacob Israel said, I adopt these kids and they get my name, which was Israel. Okay? All right. But Joseph sees the guy's hands are crossed. He said, you got your right hand on the wrong guy. I want the other guy. You got to do it the reverse because this one's younger. No. So Jacob Israel says to Joseph, he says, no, this one guy's good. This guy, Manasseh, he's going to be great. But the other guy, Ephraim, he's going to be a company of nations, a group of nations. Okay. So you end up, therefore, with 13 tribes, 10 of which are called lost tribes. Okay. And that's why this book is called Lost Tribes and Prophecies, because it goes to where they went. Now, we believe that the descendants of Ephraim ended up in the UK, the British Isles, and then they went to different places, Australia, New Zealand, Canada, etc. And as far as the blessings about being a company of nations, the biggest land empire the world's ever seen was the British Empire. And so we believe that some prophecies regarding that were fulfilled by the British Empire. But there's another one who's supposed to be great among the nations. We believe the United States has fulfilled that particular prophecy. Now, this has to do with physical blessings, not spiritual ones. Okay. I want to make that clear. Some people who teach some version of British Israelism teach that one race is superior to the other and only one race gets saved and all that nonsense. And because they're Israelites, all Gentiles are heathen and all that stuff. Well, first of all, I'm primarily Gentile. I'm just going to say that at the get-go. And most people in our church are Gentile. So just to say that. So we believe that if you look at the prophecies, that they were best fulfilled with, in terms of Ephraim and Manasseh, with the British Empire and the United States. Now, we also teach something that the British Israelite people don't like to hear. And that is the one who got all the blessings. Jesus said, to whom much is given, much is required. The Bible also talks about cursings happen to those nations. Mm-hmm. So we do not believe, by the way, that in the time of the end, the United States and UK will be anything other than conquered. So we believe they will be conquered based on a bunch of prophecies. So that differs from, I hate to use this term, but I will, white supremacist Israel view. They don't agree with us. And that's fine. We have nothing to do with them. We've been lumped in with them occasionally, but when people actually read what we teach, they say, well, no, you don't teach any of that. No, we don't teach any of that.
Right. Well, I asked that question.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I was saying I asked that question because, through a lot of different research and, having different conversations, people don't, the Jews or the people who call themselves Jews now are really Khazarian Europeans, right? And not actually the Jews from the tribe of Judah. So that, and the fact that people feel like there's a stolen identity that's happening in the sense of how they're able to use, Bible and Bible prophecy in order to do a lot of the things that they're doing, but it's just not working. And there's talks of that in the Bible, and there's different, conversations that have came up through different things that have said about, you know, Jerusalem won't be, or Israel and all these other different places. Like, um, so to me, it's a bit confusing whenever people talk about the Jews in a way as if they're originally from the tribe of Judah. And so that's what I wanted to, that's what I'm trying to get from you. Do you feel like, or do you know based on your research, whether the Jewish community, especially the ones that are in Israel and the ones that are responsible for what's going on out here, are original descendants from the tribe of Judah, which
Yes, although
would
there's
be
a lot of,
considered the Jews, right?
yes,
Which would be considered the Jews, right?
right.
And so reason why we're saying that is because in every area of where all of these things took taking place at, European whiter skinned people could not have been these people, right? So from your research and stuff like that, have you ran across that bit of information, or do you feel like that information is not true?
I've run across it, and I don't think it's true. And I'll give you a couple of simple reasons. You've heard the expression, "A picture is worth 1,000 words."
Mm-hmm.
I can find a picture. I'm going to hold it up while I flip through my book here. Okay, remember I mentioned that Emperor Vespasian had General Titus take over Jerusalem,
Right.
take over Israel and destroy Jerusalem. All right, somewhere here, I can find it. I should have marked it. I have a picture of two coins that were made at that time.
Mm-hmm.
So the Romans put together two coins, okay? And I looked at those coins. As a matter of fact, I actually contacted the guy who took pictures of them so I could get better pictures of them a long time ago. And I'm still looking if I can find the coins. If I find, I'll show it to you. If you look at the coins, it talks about Judah captive, okay? That's in Latin, basically. So they're the captives of Judah. Anyway, those people, if you look at them, are not black. They are some type of Caucasian. And so I'm not finding the picture because I'd hold it up. Oh, did I just see it? Hold on. Maybe I did see it. Yeah, okay. I don't know how well this is going to go out for your audience to see that.
Right.
Those are the coins, because that's the emperor, of course. But on the back side of the coins, it shows they're captives. And those people are they appear to be some type of Caucasian. And so now, again, there were blacks and others who met with them, people from Egypt interbred with them. I mean, there were all kinds. But that's one of the reasons why, because I've had people tell me, no, the ancient Israelites were black. No, there's no, to me, it is totally illogical that the Roman Empire would make coins of them capturing European-looking Jews if the Jews were black, Negro people. Okay.
Yeah, so I think that's where it comes into the level of confusion, because whenever they talk about the tribes initially, whenever they traded, they didn't trade using money. So whenever they think about money, money is more of a Roman thing, right? Whenever they created the coin and as their way of trade, that's more of that type of thing. So anytime that comes to something that is that or based on an image or something like that, and this is based on research, this is not me saying that what you're saying is wrong or right. I don't know. This is why we're having this conversation, because based on that research, that wouldn't be something that would be predicted from those that would be black, because during that time they wouldn't have used money in the form of a coin. So that wouldn't be something that they would use to depict. And then when they say captives of Judah, like when they talk about Jesus himself, and they say that he's the Lion of Judah, or he's a descendant from the tribe of Judah. And then when we kind of trace it back, and then we even think about even the 12 sons, and even back to the progenitor of them, they were black. and not in the sense of where it would be considered to be a color of black. We just talking about in the sense of how they describe people, because people had different shades of brown, right? And then there were those who had the darkest skin or whatever. But whenever we think about that, they all were. So for those people to come out of what they are now and consider the Jews and be considered all white, even if they do, and like based on what you were saying, intermingled with some black people or whatever, it just wouldn't be a race of just all Caucasian people who are the Jewish race, right? It just wouldn't. That is illogical to me, more so than it would be the picture of money, especially coming out of that region when even this, even those that come from that region, that are born in that region, there's a lot of people who suffer from different skin diseases and things like that of the sun, where it just doesn't make sense in that sense of saying that that's who these people are. Um, but again, like you said, throughout certain types of research, I think it just depends on, like how you said, what you guys teach and the Sunnis teach. It's a matter of interpretation based on what a person would like to perceive as the truth, right? Because it just doesn't make sense. And then even though they say
So
in
I
order
would,
for
I
you
would
to be
disagree with you on
considered a
that.
Jew, you have to come through the mom, right? They said like even for you to be considered a true Jew, like your mom has to be that, right? Not can't be through your dad. It has to come from
We
the
don't
woman.
teach that.
Yeah, I know. You might not teach it, but this is part of their teachings, right? Because I've had these people on the show, so a lot of the information that I'm talking to you about is talking to people that I've had on the platform, right? And so even from their perspective, right? So that's why, to me, and even with having a conversation with you, it is why I'm saying that it seems like there is a space of stolen identity going on. Because it just doesn't make sense that these race of people will only be white, right, or Caucasian based, and when they say that you can only come through the woman in order for you to be considered a true Jew, and which we know during that time, if that was the case, we know for sure that the tribes that were enslaved were black.
Well,
So
I think we know that for sure.
yeah, right. So it just wouldn't make sense that
No,
the Jews that we consider Jewish or whatever that is considered would be just a race of Caucasian people, and they're not black. Like that, it don't make sense.
well, I would suggest you look at the archaeological evidence, because if you the coins are archaeological evidence that the Romans considered that the people they conquered were Caucasian. That is archaeological evidence from the year 70.
But that's just like when Christopher Columbus came over here and said that he thought the people were from India here,
Yes, but if
right?
you
It's a
if you would have made
version of it.
pictures of, but if you would have made pictures of them, see that's what they
Uh-huh.
did. If you look at the coins, they tried to be accurate in terms of what the Emperor Vespasian looked like and General Titus looked like. One would presume they would try to be somewhat accurate for the people that they had conquered. And again, General
Yeah, I don't
Titus was
know.
there. Okay, it wasn't
Right,
like
right, right,
Rome. He was there. As a matter of fact, he didn't want to destroy the temple. He told the Jews over to look. I don't want to destroy all your stuff.
right.
Stop fighting us, or else. And they didn't listen. He said, "No, you don't understand. We're stronger than you." And
But
so,
I get where you coming from about the coin though, because if General Titus did take over Jerusalem, I mean there were a bunch of Caucasians that were in Jerusalem, but I wouldn't consider, like, even then, and they were there because I mean they were there with him and they took over and they conquered. So I can understand if now another regime came in and they felt like they conquered Caucasian looking people during that time because of those that came through with General Titus, but that doesn't take away from the original people that was there. It's almost like the Palestinians and the Jews. Like the Palestinians have always been there, right? So it don't take away from that just because when a certain people come. It's like now, like if a person comes to the United States and they take over this United States, no matter what happened from colonization, right, up until now, they wouldn't be able to come over here and say they just took over these type of people. Like this is what the people look like.
I,
Even
I,
if you looked at our money, like right, if
but
you looked at our money, they wouldn't
uh,
be able to say that all the people look like our money.
I have not seen any archaeological evidence that the people there were black.
Where?
In Israel at the time of Jesus. The earliest, now this is probably biased, but the earliest depictions of Jesus, in terms of some people trying to draw pictures of him. First of all, he did not have long hair.
Right.
But the earliest depictions that they've found claim he's Caucasian, but that's not proof. And the reason that's not proof is that was a century or two later. Okay, so that isn't proof. But I haven't seen any archaeological evidence around the time of Jesus that the bulk of people who were Jewish were black. Now, when you read the book of Acts, the people who came to Jerusalem, Acts chapter 2, and most of those people came from the Near East or Europe. And I think one of them, may have come from Africa. But so the bulk of people coming in to keep the day of Pentecost were also from what I would call Caucasian-dominated lands.
Yeah, nah, you know what? And that's why I said this is a great conversation, because, even in the Bible, right, when it talks about when Jesus, when they had to flee into Africa in order for them to escape the persecution of the king at that time. Now, we all know that Africa as a country in a whole is black, right? And black people. So in order for Jesus to even be able to blend in and hide in, he couldn't have been Caucasian, because he was stuck out like a sore thumb.
No, I disagree.
Especially during that time.
I disagree.
You know what I'm saying?
Because I disagree, because the Egyptians were not black. They were brown. Okay.
Well, that's the thing about color. See, that's it. Right there, what you're saying. I think that's where the issue lies when it comes down to, because people look at color as a race.
Right. No,
and black is not a race, right?
I understand. But you also look at facial features. Okay. If you look at the hieroglyphics, you'll see three types of hieroglyphics. One, where people are white as a sheet. Okay. Two, where they're black as this mouse. And three, where they're brown. And most of the people in the hieroglyphics are brown. Okay.
Okay.
But when you look at their facial features and bone structure, they appear not to be consistent with. If they used to divide people into three categories, broad categories: Caucasoid, Negroid, and Mongoloid. Okay. If you look at people in Egypt on hieroglyphics, they appear more on the Caucasoid side than they do the Negroid side in terms of nose and how their faces look.
Yeah, well, yeah, but that's again, whenever you look at the country of Africa in a whole, even those from the countries in Africa, they look different. Like, all Africans don't look the same, right? You can't say that a Nigerian looks like a person from Ghana or whatever. So I get where you're coming from when that. Go ahead. Go ahead.
In northern Africa, those people are Arabs. Okay, all of northern Africa, they're Arab peoples, and that's what was in Egypt.
So who were the Cushites then? Who was the Cushites that would originally in
Sudan? And the Cushites were in Sudan and Ethiopia, and there were actually, I think, 6 Cushite pharaohs. There was a Cushite dynasty for a short time in Egypt, but they were not their first and they were not their last. They were there for a short period of time. They got sick and tired of the pharaohs who were having all kinds of problems. They didn't like how they were treated. They got their military, they rose up from the Nile, and they took over for a short period of time. But the bulk of people in North Africa, and I'm hoping to go to Morocco maybe next year, are Arabic. And I've been to Arabic countries, and those people are not black. Hold on, my battery thing just turned on, and I don't want the extra noise. So North Africa is predominantly Arabic and has been. And again, I've been to been to Arab countries.
Yeah. But still, at the end of the day, I think that's where people get the confusion, and the people, like I said, they consider black a race, and black is not a race. I mean, it was a description of people and a description of what they consider people to be when it came down to, I guess different shades of how you could describe a person, but black is not a race. And for some reason, we have all been, as far as brown skinned people, darker skinned people, not Caucasian people, we have all been wrapped into a color as a race. So that's not true, because it's just like all Caucasians, not just because they're Caucasian doesn't mean that they're not tied to a race. But when it comes down to people who look like me, we're tied to a color, which is not a race. So
I,
anytime people talk about Africa, whether they try to separate northern from central to southern Africa, they try to separate its people as if its people are not, you know, of the same. Now, depending on the shade of a person is different. But when we come down to melanin based people, um we all, and I'm talking about people who are melanin based people, we have to stop accepting that a color as a race, right? Because then that's when conversation like we're having right now, it gets muddy and it gets confused whenever a person says these people were not black, when we I'm not black, right? But I will be considered that just be based on the way person wants to look at me, right? But I'm not either. Like if somebody was like my color right now, the color I am, if I was to answer that on a test, I would get it wrong if I put black, right? But I'm to accept that as a color, or based as a race, and that's wrong. And that's why people think that there's a separation between brown people or people, melanated people in general, that when it comes down to Caucasian people, they think that because a person is brown, that doesn't make them of a certain descent. And that's not true. So whenever we get into conversations like this, yeah, it's easy to say that people seem to be a certain thing or whatever, but we all know that since slavery, we have all been mopped into a color as our race or our identity, when that is just not it.
Can I tell
And
you a
it's
funny
not
story?
true. Huh?
Can I tell you a funny story that happened to me?
Go ahead, tell me.
All right. Town I lived in, place called Salem. It's in Michigan.
Right.
And it was like the last stop on the Underground Railroad.
Gotcha.
So, but most people didn't stay. But in what we call the village of Salem,
Uh-huh.
there are people who look like you.
Right.
Now, here's the funny thing. I'm 13 and I'm in Michigan.
Right.
Now, you might think I don't look very dark,
Right.
but I was the darkest kid in class other than people who look like you.
Gotcha.
And a guy came up to me and he said, asked me if I was part black.
Right.
And I said, I'm pretty sure I'm not, in terms of having African heritage, because I went and looked. But yeah, I was unique because, how can I put this? Other people in Michigan look like me in the summer, but didn't look like me in the winter
In the
time.
wintertime.
So I was always a little darker. And until he pointed this out, I never thought of it. It didn't occur to me, but apparently he looked around and it's like, you don't look like anybody. You don't look like anybody else. So I thought that was kind of
I
amusing.
mean, but think about that in the sense of that, right? And probably the reason why you don't is because you said you found out later on. So I'm sure you know when you mapped your DNA exactly what makes what your
Yeah.
makeup is. But in that sense, all the things that, because you're not just one thing, because none of us are, right?
Oh,
So when
multiple things.
right. So in the sense of all of those things that we make up as an individual, this is why I say there's that confusion on when they say a person is what they are just because of what they look like on the outside, right? That doesn't break down to everything that they are, because then sometimes you go look at a person, they look like you, and then they come back with 5 and 10% African, or this percent of Asian, and this percent of this, and then you're thinking to yourself, you have none of those traits the way that you look. But when it comes down to where you are or where you are placed in the world outside of the United States, right? Before colonization, you could, right? But anytime after that, you got to realize that everybody that says wherever they're from or wherever this place is that they are original from, they look like that. Now, whether they mixed in and went and traveled and did all these other things, we understand that, and that's what they're going to do. Because even when we talk about the Tower of Babel, they said that, languages were separated, right, at that point. So we understand that at one point, everybody even talked the same language. So that's why I say whenever people talk about historical things and they get down and talk about these different things, I don't know if people really looking as far as they need to look, because even based on hieroglyphs or drawings on the walls and stuff like that, these people didn't play. They didn't have time for imagination. There was no so-called fiction writers at that time. So if they depicted things, whether it's the spinning wheel, which we understand is UFOs or whatever they can call UFOs or whatever these things were, right? I've never seen a hieroglyph of a dinosaur. But yet and still, they show all of these different depictions of them inside of museums. So there are so many different things that people put out for you to see and make you think that is one thing, but it's really not. Because to me, there's no such thing as them saying it's every other animal in the world that's depicted on hieroglyphs, but not a dinosaur. So I'm just saying, whenever it comes down to it, I get it. But things that don't make sense, it don't make sense. And to me, it doesn't make sense that this group of people are considered those just based on how they look. Nah, it can't be that. Because like you said, and I just said, we're made up of so many different things outside of what our skin color shows. So there's no way that it was just this group of people based on how you look can just be this one thing. There's no way, right? You can't be the only person in the world that's saying you're just this one thing. You're not. So the argument that they have, they're saying that this person wasn't black and this person, it don't make sense. Because how could you say that something wasn't something when you know that you have it in you yourself? The one thing that most people have in them is some type of African. Everybody don't have some type of everything else inside of them. But every single person that ever mapped their DNA, they have some form of African percentage in their DNA. It's not that the opposite way around. So regardless, people can have the argument, they can say what they want, but the majority of people come from melanated people. Now they can call them black, call them brown, call them shims and him, whatever. Call them what you want. But when it comes down to it, the proof is in the pudding. And all I ask is for people who map their DNA, who have done their DNA, just to say, prove me wrong. Who don't have a percentage of African in them? Just say it. But there haven't been a person that can say that. So for those that are saying that this is not true, it don't make sense. So I'm glad that you came on, because I think people need to really get more in depth into your writing, because not many people take the time to study things outside of themselves in the first place in order to become a person that can predict things based on the Bible, because I know you use the Bible for a lot of prophecies and predictions, so it doesn't come off like you're like the Alex Jones of religion or something like that, right? Where his predictions come off of his feeling and yours is actually using Bible scripture along with tying to things that go on in the world today. So before we get out of here, how can people, so they could get more of your stuff, I know you said it a little earlier, how can people find out more about your writings and how to get more into the things that you are talking about?
Okay. Well, I mentioned the shortest, easiest one to go to is ccog.org. Books are there, like let's say this one that I held up. And again, it's free. It's online. We don't ask for email. We don't ask for money. It's at ccog.org. I have another website called cogwriter.com. cogwriter.com. Now, at that one, on the news page, that's where I have 3 posts every day. I think I messed up a couple of times. Maybe I goof and I end up with 2, but it's
for the most
every
part
day.
3.
And what's interesting about that is because I'm looking at news and anything prophetically that it's related to, or could it be leading up to? And so, I look at several hundred headlines every day. And then I read some articles, read over articles, and then I write about them. And now, while I do believe in biblical prophecy, I also believe that non-biblical prophecies are going to influence people. We talked about, for example, Iran. Okay, they're Shiite Muslims.
Yeah.
They think that that Allah is aligning with them now, going to do what they want. That's why they're acting like they're not afraid of the United States. And even if everything gets destroyed, almost a lot of things get destroyed, they figure, I'll just wait it out. If it's not now, Allah will raise up our guy later. So
Right.
that's affecting them. And then also, as I say, what the Sunnis teach, I think they're going to finally say, wait a second, we do need to get together. Our prophecies also talk about getting together, but not the same way that the Shiites do.
Right.
You've got 2 billion Muslims. And so, you don't need too many of them to believe this stuff to try to work to make it happen. So
Gotcha.
while I don't rely primarily on non-biblical prophecies, I do look at those to see how are these people probably going to perceive them. How will Roman Catholics perceive the guy who will probably be the final Antichrist? Some love him. Others are going to say something's wrong about this guy. And those is what the Roman Catholics I want to reach.
Right.
And so again, I look, I read, I write. And if you read any of my books, for example, I footnotes in reference to death. Zillions of different sources. But you don't really need my opinion. I mean, I do give my opinion, but I explain what it's based on. You can look at the facts. Like, for example, I explained about the coins. Now, you may disagree with my interpretation, but those are the coins. And then you can
just coins. Yeah, facts.
look at the evidence and come up with your own conclusion. So that's what I encourage people to do. Again, you can go to CP.org or cogwriter.com and go to the news page and writing stuff that's happening every day. Stuff is happening that's lining up with prophecies. And like I read a book about the second Trump administration. World events have lined up about 17 things, I think, in that book. Including the price of gold, by the way, just as an aside.
Price of gold.
Yeah, I said it was going to hit record highs against the U.S. dollar very soon, and it happened. Gold
did. Yeah.
It almost keeps going up and down, but I think it's close to double what it was, almost double what it was when Trump came in this last time. So, and I base that on the fact that the Bible talks about after the beast and the false prophet, Antichrist rise up, gold is still pretty valuable. Now, I'm not telling people to go take all your money and buy gold. I'm just telling you.
I know what you're saying.
The Bible says in the Old Testament and in the New Testament that gold is going to have value for a while. So that's why I said it has to. So I'm just using that as an example
of what you write. Yeah. So that's why I say, man, I think it's important that people stay abrupt with those things because so much fear is being pumped on the news, right? So much fear that people are just scared, right? And they're not really understanding where, prophecy is almost just as much as people are, it's like a prediction and telling people what's going to go on. It's also telling you how to get through it if people understand it, right? And I think that's the part that people don't get. They get the fear part, but not the part on how they're supposed to get through what they see is going on outside of them. So that's why I say I think people would enjoy, and not just as far as entertainment, no, but I'm thinking people would get from you if for people that are watching now and people that's going to watch the playback, my thing for y'all is to say, hey, this is a guy that's writing based on biblical scripture and as well as prophecy and as well as, like he said, he does use some non-biblical prophecies in order to come up with certain, things that he writes about. So I think for all of us, this is the time that we all need to be more aware of the information that we're supposed to have and not be so scared. I think this is the time for us to be empowered with information, not allow information to make us scared and make us fall for anything, right? So, Dr. Bob, I really appreciate you coming on the platform this evening, man, and sharing your expertise with everybody. And, what I'm saying, just being willing to give your stuff away too, because I'm just letting the audience know now. He did mention it, but I want to reiterate it. He's not selling his books, right? You can read them for free. You got to go to his websites and stuff like that, but he's not even using the books for profit. You know what I mean? So for those of you guys that need to consume certain type of information, he's basically saying, "Hey, I'm gonna give you this. My blessing or my purpose is to give you guys this information." So I hope all of you guys reach out to Dr. Bob Thiel. And, if not, reach out to him personally, pick up some of his literature, pick up some things, pay attention, go to his site, read his newsletter. He said he posts 3 times a day, 365. So out of all 7 days, you should be able to get something. All right. So thank you again, Dr. Bob, for being on the platform. Don't go nowhere. All of y'all that's watching tonight, thank y'all so much. And those of you that will watch each and every week, I definitely appreciate y'all. And y'all know what I'm going to do. I'm going to make sure that I keep bringing some of the world's most interesting people up here so we can get y'all this information, because that's what Sparking Conversation is about. It's not about right or wrong. It's about information. And if you guys will just take anything that we've said today and do your own research, you'll be a lot smarter than you were the day before. So thank you again, Dr. Bob. All of y'all that watched tonight, thank y'all so much. Cam, thank you for the comment. And to next week, y'all, don't forget, if you don't believe in yourself, nobody else will. So until then.